Well, here it is Wednesday. And I wanted to talk about the scenario out there in Otter Creek. I'm hoping that I don't really have a whole lot to talk about in the future, but before I left, I thought I should at least explain part of why I got wrapped up in it, and the other part was why I'm going to say less about it in the future. Okay. I got wrapped up in it because I happened to see a channel out there that seemed to be having a problem with a neighbor. And initially, when I looked at it, it looked like it was a neighbor that might be hard to get along with. Okay. Simple as that. And the person that I was going to follow had a lot of people following that channel and was pretty good in explaining his case. It would be very easy to follow the scenario. But then again, if I was a reporter or a trained person, not just somebody with a channel, I would have investigated both parties' background and what they were doing and what they thought they were going to be doing in the future. Because, well, a good investigating reporter will look at the whole picture of both sides rather than move head on with it being influenced by one or the other. Now, over the time, I learned a little more. And initially, when you get into something like this, you let your feelings guide your choices. That can be a big mistake. Now, I don't particularly care for what I call a bully. My opinion might be different than yours. And thankfully, we live in a country that allows you to have an opinion yet. At least we hope it does. Just to let you know, my opinion has caused me to be involved with some court actions. Not them that I initiated, but they were initiated by somebody else on me. And we'll go over some of that in today's video. Hopefully it won't be so lengthy it bores you and you can get out and say, to heck with it, I want to listen to this boring guy. In the very beginning, when I looked at a neighbor that likes to scream and sometimes the language may be somewhat foul from here and there. And it reminded me of Ma and Pa Kettle. I don't know if you remember a show from 70 years ago or 60 years ago. There was a show out there called Ma and Pa Kettle. There was a movie made, and most people kind of fell in love with the character actors in there. And it was fun to watch. And it kind of reminded me of that. But then as time went on, I could see reality is much different than a movie script. And when people are on camera, they do act a little different than when they're not. And if you can see them in both scenarios, you see a true picture, or at least you hope it's true. Now, the one that likes to bring the litigation against other people within this small town called Otter Creek, and not Otter Creek with a D, Otter with two T's, like the animal, otter. Okay. River otter, you know what that is. But one of the people likes to use cute names. Sometimes you laugh about it, and sometimes the name actually has some bearing in either in the way the person looks or reacts or acts. Somehow it tickles everybody's fancy when they hear something like that. It's a nickname and utilized just for show, I would say. Okay, because each time a video is put up, it is a show, even though it may be a short one, or sometimes they run hours, multiple hours. And you can get whatever you want. Whatever tickles your fancy, you're going to find on somewhere out there on those shows. Well, it seems like no matter how I looked at it, I was always getting somebody saying, Ray, why don't you do a true investigation? Look in the background. Open it up a little bit. Give your opinion, your real opinion. So I did that. And I was kind of disappointed in my initial actions in the case, because here it is, somebody that I thought was clean as a whistle, not so much. The background had some real flaws in it. And some of them made me feel bad, sick. Because the one I thought was really the hero in the thing happened to have stepped on a lot of toes, not just recently in this little town, but prior. And some of it gets to your heart. But you have to be logical in your thinking, and you have to be open-minded. Well, this one person just kept after me, not swearing or anything, nothing like that, to keep on looking. And as I did, obviously I didn't gather a lot of evidence or something like that, because I had no intention of using that kind of stuff on the channel. After all, this is a hobby for me, not an endeavor where I'm trying to punish somebody or anything like that. And I'd run into cases similar to this in business and in real life, and handled it much differently than it was being handled by either party. I felt that both parties needed some things done differently. At least if I was in their shoes of either side, I would have done it different. But I began to get attacks. And some of them are pretty vicious and brutal. And, the name calling landed on my backyard, in a way of speaking, which wasn't appreciated. And of course, then I got to looking a lot closer. And I was looking at other channels. What do they think of this whole thing? Because I can't be the only one that picked up on the tactics that were being used. And I wasn't the only one. There were several others, and some of them had been punished. Super Dave got punished. He got off the channel for quite a while because he had used it as kind of like a way of trying to figure out what was going on, and similar to what I was doing. Wow, here's a channel out there that really got nailed. And then there was another channel out there that was being attacked, and I thought, whoa, it's getting more vicious. And the whole time, this family that was being attacked, this neighbor, and I want to tell you what, it was full-blown, all hands on deck, let's go after these people. And as this person would have the Sunday lives, or whatever they want to call them, and I'd say lives, not lie, Lives. They kept building. And a lot of times it was repeatedly. And of course, as it's repeated, other people get involved in it, and they say, well, it's the truth. I heard it from here, 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 and here. Everybody was on the same page. Well, everybody actually wasn't everybody. Everybody was a select amount that was only watching a certain channel. But there again, you have to have a neutral mind at the time to look at it and try to be fair. You can't just make a decision like I did initially, and your first feelings can be very wrong, and mine were at the time. And a lot of people said, well, why don't you just take those people and bring them home with you? I'm smart enough not to do that because they're strangers. Never met them. And I really didn't know that much about them. And no, I didn't look long range in their background, although I did the one that was doing the major attacking. I looked into his. I took it back, clear back to 2014 is where I found some disturbing facts in his home area in the county. And it had to do with some court action. And I had noticed that this court action went on for around 10 years. And it was disturbing at the very least. And the paperwork that had been submitted to the courts made it more disturbing. And I didn't mention what I'd found. I just said that I found something I didn't like. But my main thing was I would like to see these bully tactics not utilized on a family that obviously couldn't fight back. They had neither the funding, influence, none of that, nothing. Both parties were new to that town. In other words, this town had been in existence for hundreds of years without them, but when they came in, the muddy water was stirred to the top, and that's all you've seen in Otter Creek, muddy water. And it didn't just stop with the neighbor. There was another neighbor and another neighbor. There was the town council. All these things were getting boiled. It was like a stew with everything goes. Everything goes in the stew. And then families were involved on all parties concerned, which I've never felt was right when you go after somebody's family, although it's not uncommon for people to do that, because when it comes to a certain point, and I call that point kind of more like a vengeance or hate. Now, those are opinions of mine, not, you can't take it as reality. Everybody has to draw their own conclusion, but they have to do it with an open mind. And like all things, if you stay on course and you keep watching it, some of it clings to you. You become part of it, and you start utilizing those same tools as you follow through and you tell others about it, because it's a storyline. It's a hobby. You try to get out there and say, okay, this is what I found, or not. And more people come up, and if you did bring proof, then they'd say, well, that document, that's fake. And I did go in and I got FOIA things. Let's see. I get all the paperwork, I label it so I can look through it. And, the FOIA request, the paperwork looks similar to something like this, okay? Anyway, during those endeavors, somebody said, well, how'd you get those? Well, they're open records. That's what they are in Levy County. Not a big deal. People will give them to you. You can go get them yourself. You try to use them with discretion, because obviously these are investigations of somebody being turned in for what is considered either a crime or a complaint of some kind. And what I was being told on the internet here was different than what was on those investigations. But I found out most people didn't believe the investigations, and that troubled me somewhat. And then some of the attacks began on the sheriff's department, county supervisors, state's attorney, judges. And I thought, wow, how can you take on that much and survive? Because that's quite an endeavor. And you see a judge overturned and off my case. Scary stuff, but it's real. I'm telling you, Levy County, Florida, has seen all that, and brought about by somebody that decided to use the courts to enforce his opinion, or maybe something else. I don't know. You see, my opinion is that money is driving this as much as anything. But there's another thing in there. It could be money. It's part of the makeup of people is to judge, and maybe a little bit of hate in there. Greed could be part of it, because they're making money. People are making money off of it. Started with one big channel, and then circulating that channel are more channels, smaller, but successful in what they do. They have a lot of followers, and they're money makers for them. Matter of fact, their livelihood depends on how they were able to operate this keyboard, how they're able to influence somebody like you or I. Now, just to let you know, I have never made a nickel off this keyboard. I've used it for over 10 years now. It's been pretty decent up till I got involved with this deal in Otter Creek. Not having monetized it, sometimes I'm not as influenced about what I'm going to put on here. Because I'm not doing it for money. I'm doing it because I wanted to use my opinion. I wanted to use my free speech. And I was trying to protect the First Amendment. You see, initially, one party went against the other with a protective order and got a temporary injunction against the party they were after. And then later dropped it. In the meantime, the other one had got one from another state and enforced it. And in my opinion, the enforcement was really offset or unfair. It was mitigated in another state north of Florida. But they used federal guidelines or statutes to allow it to be used in other states. In other words, it had to be used in whatever state that they deemed necessary. And Florida being it, a copy was delivered to the county to enforce. And the people were held virtual prisoners on their property, which to me was mentally torturous. My opinion, again. If I was told that no matter where I went, I had to stay 500 feet away from somebody else, and I lived in a town of 1,000, where can I go to ensure that I'm never within 500 feet of a party that actually lives there in that same town? What streets am I going to have to use or be careful of using in that town? And what if they own property directly across from me? Then what? Well, as time went on, and I looked at this very carefully, the male that was involved, the poor family, happened to went through a surgery, and he had to use a walker. And he was out in front of the place, walking down through there, measuring frontage on the property, when the other one with the PO, the active PO, drove by and said, 10 feet, 10 feet, 10 feet. Now, the guy's got a walker. There's a ditch on that side of the road, and the truck is here, and he's here, see? And the ditch over. So what do you do if you're in that guy's position? Meanwhile, his significant other is back there yelling instructions at him to keep his mouth shut, and he's turning around talking to her, and this other guy's filming the whole thing. Well, it turns out that because he was within 10 feet of this guy, even though he didn't go to the guy came to him. He was turned into the court in another state, and he was found guilty of being within 10 feet, which was a violation of the protective order, and therefore a fine was issued. Now, how do you get to that point? I mean, he wasn't driving, he was walking. It would be almost impossible for him to have got 10 feet away because of the ditch there. And his car or truck drove up very close to him, within a few feet. And the road being narrow as what it is, the guy actually came to that side of the road to film him and to talk. He talked to him, but he claimed it was reversed, that this guy had talked to the one with the PO, which would have been against the protective order. Well, luckily, his significant other had been filming from the property from within the fence back there and got the verbal exchange. But they didn't get it into the judge. Now, I don't know the full scope of why it wasn't, why the judge wouldn't accept it. I only know that it was not reviewed. The one was, one wasn't. Is it fair? No, not in my mind. But the man's laws sometimes are very unfair. Civil suits can sometimes take you down a dark alley and you're without a flashlight and the other one has floodlights. It happens. And in this case, it was happening on a regular basis. The FOIA I just showed you, or the investigation, was completely in the favor, for lack of a better thing, we're going to call John and his significant other. The explanation was unfounded. Yet if the court don't see it, it don't exist. If the judge doesn't accept it, you can't do anything about it. If you don't have a judge, I shouldn't say judge. If you don't have a lawyer, you're screwed. If it's a civil matter, you're not entitled to a lawyer. Sorry, that's the way it is. In a criminal law, if you don't have the funding, then you have a lawyer. But here you go. It is criminal when you get to the point, in my mind, if you have violated the judge's order. They can actually get you for contempt and put you in jail, or they can fine you. To me, that is criminal at that point. At that point, you should be able to have a lawyer say, step up, a lawyer free if you can't afford it, to defend you in this violation, because you're saying I didn't do it. Somebody else is saying you did. The judge looks at the whole thing but doesn't see the whole thing. Even though it's civil court, but you're charged with a criminal offense which can cost you time in jail and a fine. How did our laws get to the point where the poor man does not stand a chance and the rich man can take it all, just by influence and finances? It began, in my opinion, again, that this case was going to be pretty much one-sided because, quite frankly, nobody in that town had that kind of money. And pretty soon the town council was flipped, mostly to the people that the big guy, the man with the money and the influence, had wished to have in there. He didn't run, but other people did. Things changed around there. Some of it for the better, but it's a disturbance. The muddy water covered everybody. Some people didn't really like their privacy invaded, especially when somebody come out there and called their name, their town a different name. And all of a sudden there was cameras everywhere. You can't go anywhere in that town where somebody isn't taking your picture, either by surveillance cameras, and in fact, coming and going out of that town, you are now on camera. From several properties. Oh, yeah. A lot of influence by somebody with some money. Well, how do you react in a town like that? Cautiously is my advice. If I lived there, it would be cautiously. Or you can move. The man will buy any property in there if he can get it. You see, he's on the move. He owns a lot of property. It's somewhat concerning. You see, even though monopoly in business world is against the law, property monopoly is not. If you buy a town, it's yours. Legal. All you got to have is money. Or a bank that's willing to give you the money. That's all. It's easy. And if you have enough followers and they all believe you and they are willing to lick your boots for you, my opinion again, you can get away with quite a bit. You can make your own way in there and make it stick. There's not much the common person can do, especially if they're poor. Boy, and I feel bad. I do. I feel bad for the people that don't have a choice. So you're there, you're probably stuck because you're poor in the first place. You may be generations of staying there. It might have been your parents, your grandparents, or your great-grandparents that owned that property. And you're subject to outside influence at this point. Kind of bad. Well, you know what they say about shit hitting the fan, right? All right, well, let's go on. Let's see what happened. Well, then, of course, one of my videos was taken down. No letter of cease and desist. YouTube did take it down. I would have had to dox myself to fight it, no matter what. So that not only was taken down, the video was destroyed. YouTube destroyed it. It was never handed back. It was gone. Which was fine. That doesn't mean that there wasn't copies made of it. It happened to be one where this big guy, the guy with all the money, had made some comments about the people in town, about the town itself. In my mind, calling it Otter instead of Otter, that's attacking the name. It's insinuating that the people may be odd, that the town is odd. That on every corner in that town, there are rug dealers. And I say rug because that's accepted by here. And if you put a big D in there somewhere, you can find out the right words to utilize. But in the YouTube world, certain things can get you knocked off. So rug is a convenient name. It's like speaking pig Latin, if you know what I mean. In that instance, we'd say rugged. Rugged dealers. Okay. Now what? Well, the people in there, did they take issue with it? Guess not. Nobody came on here and said anything about it. Now, I did several times. Guess what? There's 10 people in there at this point that I'm aware of that are on the docket to be sued. We were all issued summons in a court case. You see, this person was able to reach out over several states and grab me. Now, I answered back. Of course, it came at an inopportune time. I was having to answer to a case. My wife was in the hospital. She took a fall. I wasn't able to do much on here. Quite frankly, my hours were in the hospital, night and day. I'd come home from time to time and try to get a little sleep, get cleaned up, and get back there. Because I wasn't paying attention in that first month of what was going on, I'd asked for some help. Was able to get it. That help was attacked. My wife was attacked while she was in the hospital through different things, Facebook being one of them, and, of course, myself. And I wasn't able to get out there and defend myself or my wife, although it did bother me somewhat while I was in there. But I figured, well, these people, they don't know me, they don't know my wife, they've never met her, and they're being hateful in their speeches. There again, that's my opinion. Other people think, well, they're defending themselves, except that I wasn't out there making noise. It was all coming from somebody else at me and my wife. Just to let you know, in that first month, my wife had a couple of sessions where she bled out. She got down to 4 something. The doctor said at that point it was attacking her organs because she didn't have a blood flow. During that time, she went from one hospital. She was able to come home for a week, and then I had to take her into another hospital. She was having extreme trouble breathing. She had blood clots that had moved from her leg into her lungs. It caused her heart to beat at double the normal rate for her. It's like she was running uphill. I brought her in there and they stabilized her, and then they called me back and said, she's bleeding bad, Ray, you need to get in here. And so I did. And they put a team together at 1:30 in the morning. They worked hard, night and day. There was a nurse on a monitor watching my wife, and there was somebody physically in there every 15 to 20 minutes to check her. She was that close. It was hard to go home. And we were welcome. My daughter by then had come up to help me. And we were welcome if we wanted to just lay on it was a hard, more like a bench, but it had 16 inches or 17 inches of flat spot you could lay on, and then they would supply the pillows and the blanket and all that stuff. You could stay right there. They allowed us to have meals in the room with her. Very reasonable. And we did that. It allowed us, but it didn't allow me to do other things. And I would run home and feed the pets, or my daughter would, one of the two of us. And my neighbor helped out. And the neighbors all here were concerned. They were offering to mow the grass while I was gone. But the only thing is, on this channel, this one right here, I was being attacked. Facebook. It make you sick, the things that they say in Facebook. Some of them had to do with sexual innuendos of my wife finally finding a real man because her pelvis had been cracked on one side. It was broke on the other side. She couldn't walk. She was bleeding to death in the hospital. And she was still attacked. A couple of times I came on here and tried to bring an update, and I was accused of being on here every day instead of by my wife's side. Nothing could have been further from the truth. But people believed it out there. Didn't bother to check it out. They just kept repeating it over and over and over. Some of the people asked me if I wanted their help to keep my channel from being under this attack. And I said, yes, please do it. I didn't have time to look at everything out there. And they did that. They come in and kept this thing clear. And I'm sorry if I'm running over. I've been on here a half hour trying to explain my case of what I went through. Finally, after they'd operated on her several times, they couldn't keep up the blood supply. They ran out of blood. They went to the next town in an emergency to have blood brought up. About the time it was to arrive, they called another town. They said, Ray, this is beyond our capabilities here. We need to put your wife in intensive, somewhere where they've got more things that they can do for your wife. And I said, okay, let's do it. They got a helicopter to fly in. Meanwhile, they were able to get this blood in. Her veins collapsed before the helicopter came. There's people all over the bed trying to get in so he could get more blood in. They went into her bone. They had to break through it. They couldn't give her anything for pain because she was so weak. Her heart would have stopped if they did anything like that. The helicopter came in and had blood on it. They immediately put her into the helicopter and took her 75 miles away. My daughter and I jumped to the car, made sure our pets were okay, that my home was on the way to get to the other hospital. We got there, the team was already assembled, and they were getting her ready to take over in the morning, and meanwhile they stabilized her in that hospital. Lots of people involved, surgeons. Some of them were for GI, some of them were for opening up a cavity in the abdomen, but they didn't do the abdomen yet. She'd already had a coil put in, a vein up there to try to plug it, and that had happened before she went on the helicopter. Again, her blood went way down, and they were able to give her. By then, there's 25 units that had been put into her in the past month. 25 units. The GI people in the morning went in and got her stopped. No more leakies, no more seepage, none of that. And she was recovering and talking, but there was at least 5 pumps pumping stuff into her. She was unable to eat at that point, so they had to use liquid in the interchange, and they were feeding her through her veins by then. She went down to 85 pounds prior to this, and all of a sudden she weighed over 140. Over 40 pounds of liquid in this poor woman, my wife. It blew her up like you wouldn't believe. And she was leaking from her arms, leaking from her feet. We put those things in different places on her to soak the water up, because it was that wet within minutes, and they would change those. And then they would move her around to keep her from getting bed sores. But by then she already had 4 major bed sores on her that were open wounds. She had very little control over everything that was going on in her body. It was being controlled by the machines at that point. When you walked into the room, it looked like you were walking into a spacecraft. And there was these trees on each side that have pumps and medicine, and unreal. And my wife was in the middle of this, just a little gal. And a lot of times she was smiling and cracking jokes and talking to people, because these things kept her alive, these liquids. She couldn't eat. She was doing everything she could. She fought with everything she had. And we watched. And she would get up, and then she'd be down. Thank God we were able to spend the amount of time we could with her. And then she had a heart attack. The bleeding finally had caught up with the organs in her body. And the chemicals couldn't keep her alive. I argued with the surgeons in the administration, but she was too weak for them to do any more. And she passed away. So then I come home, and what have I got? All these shots of people that had been attacking and going after this poor woman that couldn't do anything. And I'm being made out like I'm on here all the time, and I wasn't. That I should have spent more time with my wife. I can guarantee you nobody spent any more time with my wife than I did. I did everything I could. And still would. She fought harder than anybody I've ever seen to stay on this earth. People from all over the world were praying for her. And I think they brought her up long enough so that the family could spend time with my wife, and friends, even neighbors, that poured their hearts out to her and wished her the best. And all the people that were helping her, and then to look at some scenario like this machine, this piece of crap machine, where people can get behind it and say all these things, even though they didn't know her, had never met her. And they all based it because I have a disagreement with one creator out there that happens to have around 750,000 followers, and all kinds of people around him that are making a lot of money off from repeating the things that they think this guy is some kind of a hero. I begin to feel, I know what Michelle and John went through now, because not only did these attacks center on me again, and they still are to this minute. I get mentioned all the time for having an opinion. Now, the First Amendment, a lot of people don't realize it, but the first 16 words have to do with freedom of religion. And then the afterthought was how freedom of press and freedom of speech and things like that came about. Our First Amendment is being attacked, and if it goes away, like I say, the first 16 words have to do with freedom of religion, people, separation of state and religion. There's a lot at stake. And it's easy to go after somebody when they're a little on the older side. And in a civil suit, unless you have the money, the cards are stacked against you, period. If you're not a lawyer and you can't afford it, you don't stand a chance in hell of winning your case against somebody that has millions. And this case is running out there in social media on this thing. And a lot of you are going to get mad at me because I came on here and gave you my case, my side. And you're not going to look into any background. You're not going to see what's truth. You're just going to say that I don't know what I'm talking about, or I'm too aged, or who cares, right? That you've got this hero that you bow down to. I bow down to no man, only to God. And I have to rely on Him for guidance and tell Him how much I love Him on a daily basis. It's not long that I'll be seeing that person that created me, and I have full faith that that will happen. I believe in Christ. I believe that He is my Savior. I look forward to that day because I'll get to see my wife. And if I have half of the grit that my wife expressed in those last 2 months of her life, I'm certainly going to be able to fight this court action. Has it formed an opinion in my mind? It has. Having to defend myself, or is that you're going to tell me that that's not Christian? I beg your pardon, it is Christian to defend yourself. Turn the other cheek, I've turned my other cheek enough. I'm done getting beat. I'm done letting my family get beat. You want to know something? My father's obit was doxxed out there on these channels, on the Facebook. I hate Facebook as far as I'm concerned. The opinion, my wife was brought up on that over multiple times. Some people can't stand it, that I have my opinion, that I like to use my First Amendment rights. I've been accused of everything. Trying to be a preacher? I'm far from being a preacher. I never said I was, never intended to even be considered that. I do have a love of life in my Lord and my family. I have those. But I have somebody that would like to take my freedoms of walking around, just as they did Michelle and John's, by putting a protection order against them. And the threats. There's 19 people out there that this person is suing right now. 19. And right now, it looks like there's going to be more join the group. I'm just telling you what I've seen out there, what my opinion of the whole thing is. And yeah, I've been on here now over 40 minutes. Why? Because now this is eating at me a little bit, because they attacked an innocent person that didn't deserve it. When you went after my wife, that was wrong. Now, there's another woman whose husband was a lawyer. And his only thing that he did to bring all this down on him was to represent Michelle and John. That's all. While he was doing that, he had to go in the hospital once. He has to go to doctor appointments. Why? Because he had a bad heart. And he was being mimicked for it. And then he passed away. He's not here anymore. Left behind a wife. And this person that decided to go after him, they're going after his estate through his wife. And the threat is you'll have nothing. And you can blame it on your wife. On your husband. That's what's like. If I would have passed away during this time, all what was going on here, would my wife had to face that? She certainly would have. Now, she's a fighter. She would have fought it. She wouldn't have deserved it. I wouldn't have been here to help defend her. She would have had to fight something she's never heard of before. Never fathomed. Now, I didn't sit idly by. I went to multiple lawyers. I asked advice. And I have formed an opinion of how I'm going to proceed. Now, I realize, as I said on a live show, that all these people are feeding off from what we're saying as people out here, our channels. They're feeding off from it, and they're going to feed off this one. Mark my words. They're going to use this maybe they'll make a whole show out of it. I don't know. They're going to try to tear it apart, tell you how inept I am. I just went through having to redo my will and power of attorneys. During that time, I took this little test that see how mentally I am. Am I going downhill? I happen to be in the top 5% of the intelligent testing for logical thinking. Top 5%. Not bad. It's not the top, not the very top, but top 5%. My IQ is pretty high, way over the average. And there's certain things, in my background where I worked as an inventor in different companies. And there are patents out there that have my name on them. I don't own them because you sign your patents away when you work for a company. And I've worked in the lab before. Worked with minerals and chemicals. And a lot of my stuff are in nuclear plants, but some of my stuff are permitted in factories. Some of the stuff I invented through machineries. So if somebody come after me because I'm not able to operate out there in life, they'd be way off base. Way off base. And before I was even thinking about giving power of attorney, I wanted to make sure that as I'm making all these decisions since my wife died, because quite frankly, it brings you down. It brings you down to the very base core that you have. And you look at people to blame for it, but you know that there's no proof. Nothing like that. You have to accept the will of God when these things happen to you. But he doesn't expect you to just roll over. When you've turned your cheek enough times, when it hit one side and the other, then you have to come out and defend yourself. I intend to defend myself in any way that I can. Whether I express my opinion or not, well, we'll see in the future. I will express it in court. Am I going to run from it? No, even though I was accused that when this person come knocking on my door that I would cry like a baby and run across the lawn. That was pretty silly because the person never intended to do that in the first place. Speaking of silly things, the rhetoric back and forth, action and reactions and things like that. The real thing, this whole thing is, people you've never seen, never met, will say the most hurtful things they can to you because they're not in your face. They're not right there where they can see it. They're behind a keyboard, behind something like this. And it makes them brave, bigger than what they are in real life. Makes them say things they know aren't true. And like sheep, they follow each other, and the goat leads the sheep, the herd. Yes, I know. Some use the Lord as being able to recite some of the words of the Bible to tell you what their sight is. My opinion is this. I know enough about the Bible. I think that I can see false prophets out there. Certainly in this thing, I can. I know how Christians react. Hate is a hard pill to swallow. And it's a hard one to fight off. And the only way you can is with the help of the Lord. He is the only one that can remove it from your shoulders. Life goes on. And hate will not let you go on if you let it completely take your life over. Determination? Yes. I have determination. If you look into my eyes, you can see that it's there. I didn't get this old or get through life without being able to defend myself, my family. If you were to ask anybody in my family, they'll tell you I stand up against, no matter what it is, to protect them. Whatever it takes. None of them have any qualms about what I would do. They just hope I won't. Did I have things to think about and do when I was young? I was pretty wild. Yeah, I went out there and did what they call rat racing with a vehicle. Drag racing. Hell on wheels. Yep. When you're young, you say young and dumb. I call it just young and inexperienced. You do things that when you get later, you get some intelligence about you. But I was lucky enough that I went in the service. From the service, or while I was in the service, I married the person that would become my life's partner. The one that just passed away a little over a month ago. That everybody out there that was hating on me, I use the word hating, had attacked. I hope you're happy. Well, I don't know if I should talk any more about that anyway. It's, this fog that protected me, that kept me from worrying about it, thinking about it. It's starting to have breaks in the fog, quite frankly. I'm starting to see reality of life out here. The life that I have to face, that I was afraid to face 6 weeks ago. Now that I'm feeling a little better and I can see clearer, now I've got the fight back. And I can see what people were trying to do to me when I was down and out, when I couldn't fight back, when my wife couldn't fight back. My wife was fighting for her life. You were fighting to trip her up again. What a mess. I hope your life sucks for the people out there that were attacking without even knowing somebody. The fact is, you don't give a shit about the First Amendment or who's right or wrong. You're just having a ball with the keyboard here. That's what it amounts to. That's my opinion again. Now, I realize there's other people who are in there for the money. If they say anything different, come on. Come on. I know a lot of you are using a child as a focal point for all your rhetoric and attacks and everything you're doing, but you're destroying a lot of people. Not just one. Not just two. But we're talking a lot of people. You're doing everything you can because their opinion is different from yours and you don't even want to give them a chance in court. You want to do it out here in social media. And you're getting away with it. And I don't know why YouTube put up with all that. Why they allow the doxing that's going on or the name calling or any of that stuff, because it's harassment. You know that Michelle has somebody out there from another country that weekly writes a daily diary on her. And they use AI to do that, mimicking her voice. And it's wrong. You know it's wrong. We all know it's wrong to do that. And yet you justify it because you think you're saving a child. I don't know where this world is going. I know that it seems like half the people are mad at the other half. Why, I don't know. It wasn't like that when I grew up. Well, since I've taken this to an hour, and I was thinking about going live with it at one time, but I knew that if I did, there'd be some remarks in my chat. Not only that would be disparaging against me, but also some people might put their opinion out there, and the chat would be taken down, and I would lose my channel. Because people don't have that freedom. Even though they go in somebody else's channel, they can get the channel taken down. YouTube has moved in on some people just because of the way they reported something. And everybody claps and they're having a good time over it. You see, everybody that loses their channel and loses the freedom of expressing, that's one more hit at our freedom of speech, First Amendment. Like I say, the first 16 words have to do with religion in that First Amendment. We lose the First Amendment, we lose everything that means anything in this country to us. I know, you don't believe me. Go in there, look at it. I'm telling you, 16 words. You know why I know it? A classmate of mine, when I had explained what happened, a very influential person, said, Ray, do you know the first 16 words in the First Amendment you claim to be protecting? No, I didn't. I'd read them, but I wasn't looking at that. I was looking at the other part about the freedom of speech. But I'm going to tell you what I did do. I went back and looked at it. I think in a way what he was trying to get across to me is look at the things you don't see before you make a decision on what you're going to do. And that's what I would ask of you people out there. This guy that I contacted is far superior to me in intelligence and in his things that he's done in life. And he was being very nice about it when he asked a question like that. Now, that's not the only question he asked, okay? There was other questions too, and it made me stop and think of how many things I had overlooked and then had no reality of the real truth in it. And he brought me back to the ground. And from that moment on, I started looking at things closer, to include legal assistance, looking at that. And one of the lawyers said, what, are you a millionaire or something, Ray? Of my expectations. Yeah. And that brought a laugh up. Between him and I both were laughing, this lawyer. The lawyer is a very top-notch lawyer. But he pushed me off into, a direction of affordability and still have the quality of representation. And the day's going to come where I will have to make some decisions about that representation. And I will. I'm somewhat frugal in nature, but understanding what this case means and what it can do and what it may mean in the future for others as well as myself. I'm thinking over very careful because of the advice I was given up front. I have to think of my family as well, and I have done that. When I look down through there, and I think of the people that went after me, my wife and my family, including my father, I never thought I would see something like that, just because of an opinion. Just because of an opinion that I hold dear to my heart. How many people are going to suffer? And how many of you are willing to follow people that use that as a stick? That don't want to allow opinion by others? You look back at my videos, I'm pretty careful. Well, I think I've said all I need to today. I'm going to put it up. Hopefully I can get it up fairly quick. Today's Wednesday. We'll see. You're welcome to come into my comments, and if you make sense, I'll listen to it. I really will. I believe that what you say should be heard. That doesn't mean I'm going to agree with it or that I'll leave it up. It depends on how hateful it is or how factual it is. If it is factual, and if it's not hateful, it'll still be there. I may not like it, but it'll still be there on my channel. You see, I'm back. I'm going to be looking at this stuff. And for the subs that were helping keep my channel clean, thank you ever so much. And for all of you that looked and prayed and did everything you could on your part, thank you so much. You're a great group. You're a great group. And for those that don't know me, that made their opinions, I certainly will try to pray for you that the good Lord can open your eyes up a little bit. But don't make some mistakes I did, where you're fighting a cause and you don't even know all the verbiage that goes with it. Like I said, First Amendment, something so simple. The first 16 words are for our freedom of religion. You look at it. And then you see the rest of it folds out after that. And behind all of this, okay, there are cases that went before the Supreme Court that had to do with that First Amendment. Of people trying to take the rights away from us and people that are trying to expand it. And they're used on a regular basis in the court of law to prove the point of the person that's being sued or the person that is suing. It's interesting, and it's fairly lengthy. All right. My eyes were opened up. I hope I opened up some of yours out there. Yes, I pleaded my case in front of the social network here. It was time. I wanted you to understand what I had to go through and the things I was accused of when I couldn't fight back. I couldn't. I absolutely could not. People take advantage of you when you're at the lowest ebb of your life. And when you're on your, what I call your deathbed, at that point, everything is starting to go south. And you still have the vultures there at your bedside trying to pick you apart. Indeed, that was happening to my family and myself during this time. Some of the lowest time we've ever had in our life. Some of the times where we worried the most. Heartaches are there on a daily basis and sometimes on a hour-to-hour basis of up and downs. I heard the one where somebody said on Michelle, she's dying, she's not dying, she's back and forth. I heard that on the depot that was being done, and she was trying to explain that her mother had been brought back multiple times while they were working on her. The truth of what she had said was being spread out like it was a lie. And it was not a lie. It really happened that way. She was brought to tears during that depot. She'd asked if she could wait for a lawyer to assist her because she had a lawyer coming the next day. Of course, that didn't happen. It took on a person that was unable to fight back and beat her with this type of a rhetoric during that. And then people over and over put it on their channels and put it out there. And that wasn't fair either. That's just one of a lot of things, of unfair tactics that in my opinion, I call it bullying. And it's very evident. So many stories off of it. So much money was made off of it by repeating it and showing it to everybody and giving their own spin on it. And I call it a spin because they turned it 360 degrees. Well, I mean, I don't know what else I could say. Some of you that actually believe in me, I'm so happy that you do. Those that don't, well, I hope someday the fog can open up for you. Right now, a lot of that is still in place because when you lose somebody that is so close to you and you back off from life in general, and then all of a sudden these little places open up, the fog opens up, and you look out there and you see what's going on. And all the things that were building up over the past 3 months hit you in the face like cold water. But instead of knocking you down, it wakens you up, gets your mental app going about. Like I say, I took some tests just to make sure that my last will and testament will hold in a court of law. And it's not the first time I've done that. I had my will made out a few years ago, did the same thing. Anyway, I wish you a good day out there. For those that got here to the very end of this thing, I congratulate you because I realize the rhetoric of me talking about what happened to me may be somewhat selfish, but I really wanted to get the word out to you so you looked like I did Look at backgrounds. Think about it. Use that mind that the good Lord give you. Open your eyes up. Do it with an open mind when you look at these cases. The rhetoric, get past it. Look at this, the real world, the world that you and I live in. And think about it if you're in the shoes of any of those parties. Okay? Pretend like you're each one of them. Sit in their chair. Walk in their shoes. But whatever you do, keep an open mind the entire time. Would you do that way? With that, oh yeah, and yes, you're right. I did tell Michelle bye. And if you listen to my video that day, you'll understand why. She honestly feels, I think, that the people that were there helping her made her life worse. Now, I don't believe that any of us did make it worse, but I have no intention. If a person feels that they don't want my help, I am not going to help them. That's what that was. That was a goodbye. Michelle, you didn't want me to help you, and I'm not going to. And I don't know how the other people have handled it, however they want to, but I'm an unwanted guest. And therefore, you opened the door for me and I left. And with no animosity. I have no ill feelings towards you, Michelle, whatsoever. None. And I do pray for you because I want you to have a normal life like everybody else. And I'm hoping that the day will come where your eyes are opened up like they should be, and that you make sense of this whole thing rather than attacking people maybe you shouldn't, or attacking anybody regardless. So, anyway, the rest of you, have a great day out there. And yeah, I'm trying to smile a little bit. I'm trying to get back on my feet, people. If I get enough breather, I'll be here on a regular basis. It just takes a little bit for me to get to that feeling. So with that, thank you for all the help that you've given me out there. And I hope you have a good day. Yeah, I'm smiling.